This is how the House of Commons is set to look after this week's election. Wow, that's quite a landslide. But it doesn't accurately portray how people actually voted in the country. Well, the reason being, even though you can see here that over 60% of the seats are now claimed by Labour, they did it using only 34% of the votes. Why is that? Well, obviously it's because the UK currently uses first past the post, a voting system that they came up with and thought, that's good, let's never ever get any better than that. Even though many of the countries that used to be British colonies that adopted first past the post have moved on into the 21st century. And in fact, most of them did it in the 20th century. So why exactly have we kept with this outdated system, and what are people saying about why we've kept it? If the UK did enact proportional representation, well, then the House of Commons for this recent election would look a bit more like this. Well, according to Channel 4, in which a huge proportion of the seats is mysteriously other, but Reform gets labeled. That's quite interesting. Greens, nearly the same amount of seats as Reform, but we'll just other them. Don't want people to get any ideas. This is just gonna be a quick chat I wanted to have after the last election. As I left the last video, it felt like a big thing. Why not follow up? But one thing I wanted to bring up is I've seen a lot of people saying the problem with the proportional voting system is that Reform would get more seats. And I just find that a bit of a weird complaint to have, because it's like, oh, the party that I'm against, that I don't want to be in power, would get more seats under a fairer system of voting. That seems backwards. It seems like that kid that you'd play on the playground with who would just change the rules while you're playing a game to make sure he kept winning. That doesn't really make sense, right? The whole point of proportional representation is that smaller parties become more viable. As much as I strongly disagree with the Reform Party, because I do have critical thinking ability, you know what? If they've convinced enough people that the migrants coming across in small boats are scarier to them than their rich mates coming across in big yachts, well, I just think the votes should translate to a more proportional voice in government. Even if it's the people I don't want in power, it's like, but that's what people are currently voting. Maybe this is just the very American side in me that's like, freedom of speech, let stupid people talk, and that will allow smart people to be like, hey, here's how your points are stupid. And then open discourse, rather than, you know, keep it all closed off and be like, no, I'm too scared to let these people speak their stupidity. Obviously, it's a bit idealist, but the result of these smaller parties becoming more viable is people actually have their voice, their distinct voice, more represented in government. So yes, you will have the people on the fringe on the right that think all migrants are evil. You know, their voice is going to be heard. And then also people on the left that think, hey, we shouldn't really have a homeless problem. We should be taking care of our people in society. Those people also have a voice. It's weird that they have to be on equal footing, but you know, it depends on how the votes go. The issues, in my opinion, of the current voting system is that any small groups that people actually can get behind, that actually have good policies, just get drowned out, the way the system works, by the big central parties that don't really offer anything except the status quo. Or status quo. I actually don't know how you're supposed to pronounce it depending on where you're from these days. I think High School Musical's ruined me, even though I'm American. But two important things to note here. This chart might scare people on the right and the left because, you know, members of the opposing parties are getting more votes, but this specific representation isn't accurate. The reason being, this is assuming that everyone would vote the same exact way in the first past the post system as the proportional representation, which is not gonna happen. I'd say most people I know didn't actually vote for the parties that they actually believed in, because no one this election actually voted for a party they wanted. They voted against a party they didn't want, because that's pretty much how the first past the post system even works. Prior Tories are like, God, these Tories are pretty bad. I would like to try a different version of Tory that's a bit even further right-leaning. People on the left are like, oh, I mean, I'd actually like some of these Green policies and these Lib Dem policies. However, in my area, it doesn't seem like that's viable, so I have to choose Labour, even though they're a bit transphobic and such. There's a lot of issues with the Labour Party that people are like, well, I have to vote for them because they're not the Tories. And people wonder why we had such a low voter turnout this year. But the thing is, first past the post as a system does have certain benefits, that being the status quo and stability. I've seen it argued that thanks to first past the post, it's easier to form a cohesive and stable, more central government rather than constantly having like big arguing fights between different groups. But I don't really fully agree with that assessment, because a certain Tory once told me that things with a conservative majority might be more strong and stable. And, you know, instead we got multiple prime ministers and one that tanked the economy and couldn't outlast a lettuce. So who's to say? But non-opinion, proportional representation would be a much better system of voting in terms of votes actually lining up to seats in parliament and policy and actually getting your voice heard. Opinion, I think due to this, the pros outweigh the cons. And this is a really big one, but I do think it would genuinely encourage more people to vote, knowing that you have a real choice and not just a tactical one, because turnout this election was really bad. Starmer didn't even get as many votes as Corbyn did this time, and that clocks completely because no one was voting for him. They were just voting against Rishi Sunak and the Tories. Also, I do just want to add that, by the way, I have not studied poli-sci, if that's what it's called, poli-sci, political science. I don't even know what it's called. I studied math. Personally, I wish more people in politics were real people that weren't just career politicians, but the production quality on this video is high, you could say. I might be able to speak well because I know how to edit my videos so that it comes off as if I know what I'm talking about. And hey, you might agree with some of my points, but this isn't just a thing for me. Don't mistake passion, riz, a flashy camera, ability to speak well for actual facts. At the end of the day, I just wanted to share my thoughts on the country that I live in. That doesn't make me right. It doesn't make what I'm saying more valid than your opinion. I have put a lot of thoughts and research into these opinions, but at the end of the day, they're mine. So like, opinions are opinions, you know what I mean? I'm hoping you have done as much research as I have. I don't know. I do not know you. So knowing that going forward, I do want to talk about a type of comment I received on my manifestos video, which basically boiled down to, this video is very biased. I wish it wasn't very biased. I don't want to pretend that I'm not biased. Everyone is biased to a certain extent. I know you don't really know me, you just know the YouTube channel me, but in real life, personally, I find it very difficult to be a different person for different groups of people. So I just don't. I don't do that. Most people have a different version of themselves that they are around their coworkers versus their boss, versus their friends, versus their partner, versus their partner's family. I really do not do that. I am the same type of person. I crack the same type of jokes with my girlfriend's family versus people I've worked with versus potential employers. And from my experience, I feel like that has actually had a huge benefit because there's always this huge charade of like, hello, this is the type of person I'm trying to portray that I am so that you can hire me. Whereas I'm just like, hey, this is who I am, take me or leave me. And for me, that makes me feel very freeing. This is just who I am. The idea that people want me to pretend to take the Tories and reform policy seriously when I do disagree with it so heavily and find it genuinely comical, I find that bizarre. I can't do that, especially when I opened the video saying I'm going to compare these manifestos with what I am looking for in the government. I put it out right there. I don't know if you think that I'm the queen or the king and I actually don't have any opinions and I'm like, here's what I'm looking for, pure neutrality. No, I am a human being at the end of the day and these are my opinions. You know my biases. I'm an American, lives in London. Already, if you're in the North, you're like, I hate him 2 times as much now. But that's okay. I thought I also opened up perfectly fine saying, by the way, you could disagree with me. These are just my opinions. But instead, boy, people got so creased. That being said, I also got a huge amount of positive comments from people that found the video helpful. So thank you if you're one of those. Also, if you disagreed with me and wrote a really nice long comment about your argument, thank you. I also really appreciate that because I can then have a better understanding of what people that disagree with me think. That's helpful for everyone. It's just people that don't do that and people that are just like, oh, you're biased. Well, I'm biased, but I bet you wouldn't say that if I decided to say migrants don't deserve a place in the country. Oh, you'd be like, oh, actually, I agree with him. He's not biased at all. He just says what everyone's thinking. I think the worst comment I got on that manifestos video was a guy saying, oh, I hate that you're just feeding into the stereotype that the Reform Party is racist. They're not racist. They just say what everyone's thinking. God, it's like he wanted to be the stereotypical reform voter and he didn't realize he's a caricature. Come on, man. That's so funny. It's depressing, but funny. And I bring this up because, let's be real here, it is not a smart idea to talk about politics on YouTube. It is not, for someone like me that has like a variety channel, it is not smart for me to share opinions on anything because your opinion, your politics, that may slightly disagree with someone else. And then I'm losing a potential subscriber and a potential dollar bill or pound sign within my wallet. And then I would be living a fake life to me. That's just me. I personally feel like I need to share myself. That's just who I am. I need to create things and share what I've learned. Maybe I can change my mind. I do actually quite a lot. If you didn't know, I have made a video on how I used to be an American Republican growing up. And through a lot of time and learning and listening, I was like, oh, okay, I actually have changed. That's fine. That's totally cool. But I just personally feel like if I were to make the most neutral, non-opinion, non-politics content imaginable, it wouldn't feel as worth it because if I want to share something, I will. So I wouldn't really feel good about having millions of subscribers if they don't even know what I stand for. You know what I mean? Maybe I'm overthinking it. Either way, if it makes you smarter in terms of building your brand and building your revenue to not talk about politics, then clearly I'm not that smart, am I? Either way, the election is over. You know, we've got some exciting results. Who knows what's going to happen the next 5 years? I'm just happy to be able to complain about a different party for once. You know, that's British culture. Doesn't matter who's in power. Now we can complain and be like, gosh dang it, Labour, you're not doing enough. Boring, am I right? You know, and I mean, as someone who is both American and British, it is so much nicer to have had this election where, you know, people have lost, and instead of being like, let's storm Parliament and take back control, everyone's like, best of luck to the new members of Parliament. Like, that's such a nice British way of dealing with it. I don't think I'm looking forward to how the US election goes at all, because the only two candidates that are viable, neither are very viable. One can't speak, and the other one speaks too much. Nonsense. So yeah, that's going to be a rough one, right? Either way, thank God I'm in the UK. Something you never thought someone would say. Hey, I moved here for a reason. It's for the free healthcare and to steal all of your jobs, right, Nige? Anyway, thanks for watching. Even if we have disagreements, I'm glad to have you as part of my community. Regular scheduled programming coming back next Sunday, obviously. I've been Evan Edinger. You've been fun. Is that your name now? I'll see you next week. Goodbye.